Hello and welcome to Performance Check. My name is Rob and this is hopefully going to be the start of a series that I'd like to do where I stream on Performance Check on Twitch and discuss and explore material from the history of tabletop role-playing games. I will say that this will probably have an emphasis on D&D 3.5 to begin with, because that is having somewhat of a renaissance in my life currently and in my gaming life. And I thought, what better literature to explore for the first of these? What better than the very first adventure that I enjoyed when I was about 13 or 14 years old that introduced me to the hobby, Dungeons and Dragons, and role-playing games as a whole. I will share the story very briefly. It is something that I have discussed on my channel before, but to give you a little bit of context, around that age, when I was 13 or 14 years old, my form tutor, also later my science teacher, used to run a D&D club. And we were invited. There was an open invitation, actually, in our class to come and try this. And I will work out the exact date at some point, but it definitely coincided around about the time that 3rd edition was in its stride. I don't think 3.5 had come out yet, though. Regardless, we were told how to create a character, and there was I think it was a group of about 8 of us for this starting adventure. So naturally, it took a number of lunch times at school creating these characters. For those of you that have rolled characters in the 3rd edition of 3.5, it is it takes longer than some games, most games. It's not too bad. But for someone who's brand new, there's a lot of ideas and mechanisms that can be difficult to grasp when you've never played a role-playing game before. I imagine many people have had the same conversation with people when they ask what it is you do when you're playing D&D. Well, how does it work? What are you doing? And you have to kind of begin the dance that we all have become well rehearsed in at this time. We begin the exploration. Well, it is a practice of imagination. It is akin to sitting around a campfire telling stories, and the dice that you roll add an element of chaos and chance to the affair. So all that was explained to a very young version of myself, and the first module that we got to play through was the Burning Plague. Hence what you can see on the screen. Now, I was reliably informed by someone in the exclusive 3.5 D&D group on Facebook. Go and join it. There's some wonderful posts and people there. I was reliably informed that the Burning Plague was one of a number of adventures that were created for 3rd edition that were completely free. So that kind of stacks to my suspicion that this was around the time where 3rd edition was at its prominence when it was first coming out. And our science teacher began DMing us. As I've explained before, this teacher was... I've come to learn that he is a genuinely lovely person. But at the time, he was one of those teachers that was incredibly strict and had a way of terrifying students that not many teachers have the ability to. He was very, very scary. So imagine the scariest teacher you could ever imagine being your first dungeon master. The judge, jury, and executioner of your school life. Now being the omnipotent force that is controlling the figures that you face in an adventure. It was all pretty amazing, but I have to say, like, it's always stuck with me. We can't have played no more than 10 sessions in total, including the Burning Plague and a few others that we also got to dabble into, which I've yet to discover what they were, but I'm working on that. Anyway, all that to say, that was the first adventure. That was the first thing that I ever played. That was the first role-playing game experience I've ever had, and we're going to have a look at it together. We're going to go on the adventure of the Burning Plague. Now, I'm going to do my best to make this an interesting stream. And I will be doing reading from the text. I'm not sure how that will be affected copyright-wise, but as I don't have any form of monetization on my Twitch or YouTube or anything, I don't think that's going to be much of a problem, considering people stream video game content all the time. Well, this is just a game that's written down, right? Right? Surely it'll be fine. So I'm going to read some of the text, but I'm not going to read all of the document, but I'm going to approach this module here on this stream today as if I were going to run it. And I'm going to say that I'm going to critique it, because I don't necessarily think that, that my opinion should in any way alter, or I'm just rambling now. All I'm going to say is that I'm not going to critique it. I'm going to approach it as if I'm going to run it. That's what I'm trying to say. Get my words out. So, The Burning Plague, a Dungeons and Dragons adventure for 4 to 6 first level characters by Miguel Duran. So, let's get the overview. With these modules, if you're not familiar with this style of module, I don't think actually it's deviated at all for a long time with how Wizards of the Coast have done adventure modules. But effectively, at the front of the module, you get your overview. You are told strictly to make sure that only you, the Dungeon Master, have read the adventure module. By all means, introduce the players to the player's handbook, but the module is for the Dungeon Master only. And in fact, actually, it says here, as the DM, you will need a copy of the Player's Handbook to run this adventure. Having a copy of Dungeon Master's Guide and Monster Manual will certainly enhance your ability to present the material herein, but they are not required to run this module. So, a little bit of upselling there, right at the start of the module as well. You can't blame them, and to be honest, yeah, sure, if you really want to effectively run full campaigns as a Dungeon Master, those are the 3 books you will find most useful to do it with. So yeah, we're gonna have a quick look at some of the text, and we're going to establish what the story is of the Burning Plague, what the thrust of the adventure is, and we're going to try and sink our teeth into the core principles of what we need to take from this to bring into the game. I don't think I've ever spoken to any DM or GM that has run a module verbatim, like word for word. There's always embellishment and there's always subtle changes. Sometimes subtle changes have to be actually bigger changes. For instance, someone pointed out in a Facebook group that I was posting in regarding this, the 3.5 exclusive group, about the Burning Plague map. Now, I don't actually know whether this map came with the module or not. I bought this from DriveThruRPG, and it came with the illustration that you can see here. I will make it a little bigger, and I will bring it to the fore when it becomes relevant. But what I'll do is I'll quickly zoom in a bit more here. You'll be able to see at the bottom, it says scale. The 1 square equals 10. 10 feet. And that immediately threw me the moment I started reading this. Because I don't think I've ever encountered anyone using that metric, that 1 square equals 10 feet. To my mind, it's always been 5 feet, but already taking things with a pinch of salt with these modules, that necessity has already begun. So there are details where you're like, So, I don't know, maybe Miguel Duran, when he ran games, would use that way of measurement. I mean, I guess it doesn't matter maybe if you're working with less space, but then you can't have the fine tuning of I take a 3/5 at a step, for example. So what are you going to do? You're going to put yourself between 2 of the squares? Anyway, enough. Let us familiarise ourselves with the main thrust of the campaign with an introduction. A sickness has come onto the simple mining community of Duvik's Pass, poisoning their wells and blighting their crops. With the pestilence leaving the strongest men of the town's guard a few short days away from death, the burden of descending into the mines and purging the wellspring of whatever evil has settled there falls to an intrepid band of adventurers. That's you this evening, dear viewer. Can these noble heroes prevail within the depths of Duvik's Pass? Or will they too fall victim to the perils of the burning plague? That's interesting, because whenever I make interest posts or try and write a promotional thing for my games, I often try and end the sentence with the title of the session or the game. So that just tickles my my fancy already, that it ends dramatically. Or they too will fall victim to the perils of the burning plague. Very good. The Burning Plague is a Dungeons & Dragons adventure designed for 4 to 6 party characters of first level. Dungeon Masters should feel free to adjust the adventure as necessary to accommodate groups not falling within this range. However, given the fairly low power level of the inhabitants of the mines of Duvik's Pass, it should be noted that parties consisting of 20 or more total levels are unlikely to find a satisfactory challenge within the Burning Plague. Now, I want you all to remember that, because I happen to think that there are a few things in here that would mean certain death for those unprepared, particularly new players. But that being said, most of us made it out in one piece, as I recall, back in the day when we played. And then it gives you a history of Duvik's Pass, and you learn all about, like I said, I'm not going to read everything, but you've got the gist, effectively, that there's this small mining town that is been racked by this mysterious illness that appears to be the source of which exudes from this mine that they've been told to investigate within the Serpent Coil Mountains. And this place has long been a way stop for travellers and adventurers seeking to rest aching limbs and drown painful memories within her gates. And it has gained attention recently as a potential power in the area's commerce due to a discovery of substantial silver deposits here. So you're already beginning to learn that this place is a place of value with the section here, and you're kind of learning a good deal about this place already. However, the hope of industry has turned to despair and potential ruin with the advent of the Burning Plague 4 months ago. It began quietly enough, with the miners returning home from their work at nightfall, complaining of blistering sores and an unbearable thirst. And shortly thereafter, the town's livestock was decimated by an unknown illness, and the crops began to wither, and the elders of Duvik's Pass declared that the well water had been soured by an unknown disease. But by then, the Burning Plague had already begun claiming the young and the sickly. Brutal! Already young and sickly people are dying in Duvik's Pass. There's a very grave tone that's being set to this. So if I was going to be running this, first of all, that is what I would be emphasising. Yeah, sure. This is an adventure for first level players. You could really hammer home a pretty bleak and desperate tone, and even though the characters are low level, they're already dealing with a really terrible situation, and perhaps they will be the only hope of bringing it to an end. And to make matters worse, the last few men still strong enough to plumb the wealth of the mine have fell prey to a savage attack staged by a war band of kobolds just over half a month past. The fact is not known to the townspeople, who continue to await the return of their missing sons and husbands. Well, there we go, that's another plug. So not only then are they being racked by the disease, but any NPCs that the players are going to encounter at this point are going to be saying, if only our husbands and sons were here to say goodbye to the relatives that are imminently going to pass, or if they were here, perhaps they could help make them better, or and they're all praying for the end of this sickness that continues to spread across their home. And yeah, in secret, this kobold band have just absolutely obliterated a good portion of this place's population as well. In this, or their military population, or militia population at the very least. While the kobolds have claimed the majority of the mine from their human foes, they too have fallen prey to the burning plague. So even the enemies aren't immune to this power. And already they have begun to suffer losses to its ravages. So that's quite clever in a way, because you have set the stakes high, but you also have this external threat of the illness, the plague, threatening the enemies as well. So it kind of evens the playing field. So that perhaps level 1 characters will stand more of a chance against this vicious warband. Perhaps they've been weakened now. It continues. The source of the disease is Jack of the Torn Claw clan, an orc shaman who seeks vengeance upon the people of Duvik's Pass for an old wrong. It was 10 years ago that Jack saw his tribe slain by the humans of the valley. A young Jacques was one of the few of his clan to survive a concentrated effort by the militia of the pass to eradicate the threats nestling in the mountains above. So now we have been introduced to our villain, Jacques Tornclaw. It's actually interesting. I remember I've actually had to go at running one of these adventures from memory, because at the time I didn't actually know what it was called, and didn't look it up. I just tried to capture what I thought roughly happened, and the setup and the dungeon and the like. And I swear that I remember that it was an orc shaman, but then was surprised when I looked at Jacques' stats to learn that he's a cleric. But then, of course, the flavour is that he's a shaman. Mechanically, he's a cleric. A 5th level cleric, to be precise. Which is exactly why I'm thinking, wow, a 5th level cleric could cause a significant amount of problems for even 4 level 1 adventurers. That, like, a level 5 cleric. Really? And a vicious orc of the Torn Claw clan to boot? My goodness. So as the years passed, Jack devoted his life to watching the men of Duvik's Pass in their efforts and preparing his revenge, his prayers to Grumpsh One Eye. Grumpsh himself gets a mention here. Gave him resolve as he watched the weak ones steal the riches that should have been his clan's. So there we go. We're back to those silver deposits. We're back to the riches. So we've got 2 motivations for our enemy, for our villain. Revenge against those that robbed him and his clan of his home, these riches. All of that is more than enough of a motivation for a villain to be doing what he's doing, because that's something that is incredibly important, that sometimes can fall to the wayside. Is why are the people that your adventurer is fighting, why are they doing this? Simple enough question, but sometimes it can be overlooked. And already, just from reading these paragraphs here, I'm pretty much set on this conflict. I know exactly what Jacques of the Torn Claw clan wants, and I know that he is the one that is standing in the way of the players. So anyway, his prayers to Grumpsh One Eye gave him resolve to as he watched the weak ones steal the riches that should have been his clan's. After the god revealed to him the secret of the burning plague, Jacques used his newfound power to inject the springs feeding the town's wells, as well as the other creatures dwelling within the mines. Oh, I think it's missed out a word there. Anyway, yeah, so he's basically used the power of Grumpsh One Eye to create the burning plague, deliberately infecting the source of water of the wells of this place. And here we are. It says, yet all has not gone as planned. Grumpsh, being a harsh deity who values strength above all things, has decided to test his disciple. Jack has contracted the burning plague himself, and has, despite his prayers, not been able to escape its grip. Although he grows near to death, the shaman will not rest until all of the peoples of the valley are laid low. He maintains his encampment by the springs below the earth, continuing to reinforce their corruption and awaiting an attempt to free the pass. Continues to reinforce their corruption and awaiting an attempt to free the pass from his hold. So he's waiting for anyone to try and stop him, because at this point it looks like he's got nothing to lose. My goodness. So the power of evil has turned upon him at this stage, and there we have it. That's our stage set for the burning plague, for the adventure. They always had these really handy things called the things to come, because they handily assumed that you were going to play beyond this. So it also gave you sort of links and story hooks to what was to come, which is something that was here, but we won't go into that just yet. But eventually it'll say the adventurers will, with luck, navigate their way past kobolds' traps and work their way down to the spawning ground of the burning plague and the wellsprings that lie beyond. It is there that they will engage first. The undead servitors Jack has sent to guard his project. I don't remember undead servitors. Interesting. So they'll have to fight undead servitors Jack has set to guard his project, and then the weakened Jack himself. With Jack's death, the subsequent purification of the plague's spawning grounds, the travails of the peoples of Dervik Pass will come to an end. Of course, this assumes the adventurers do not first succumb to the burning plague themselves, which is another wonderful threat. Not only do you have this villain overshadowing the piece, but the danger that you could contract the burning plague yourself. So it does seem very much like a one and like there's the one solution to stop this, and that is the death of Jack Tornclaw. To be honest, he does seem rather unredeemable as a character. Although perhaps his death might not be at the hands of the adventurers, you could always angle it. I know, again, how I would run it. I would angle it in a way that they could potentially try and convince him to end the power himself, perhaps. But that should be something that is discussed by the players. But a seed sown throughout the story, perhaps. So they talk about the burning plague and what the symptoms include, and it's fever, searing muscular pains, clenching of the throat, and possible choking, fatigue, and potentially death. Well, we've discussed that it means death. So there we are. High Adventurer joins us in the chat and says, "Fuck, I remember this one. 4E. Nay." So this is 3rd edition, and it was, as I've mentioned, the very first game that I had the pleasure of being involved in. They may well have redone this for 4E, but no, this was 3rd edition, even before 3.5, as far as my reckoning goes. Anyway, thanks for joining, High Adventurer. Good to see you again. Thanks for dropping by. So so the Burning Plague, as we've made mention, then, is an incredibly deadly disease. Which requires a fortitude saving throw. It means that the PC themselves becomes noted as contagious, so they may pass it on to other people. DC fortitude saving throw, DC 13. Success indicates that the character has managed to avoid infection, although repeated or continued contact over subsequent rounds should result in further saving throws. My goodness me. Oh my goodness me. So in the case of infection, nothing transpires for the first 24 hours after a failed saving throw. The Burning Plague's incubation period, after 24 hours have passed, the affect and now contagious adventurer suffers the temporary ability loss of 1d4 con. And then once per day afterwards, he or she must make a successful fortitude saving throw to avoid further constitution loss. My goodness, so your constitution is just being drained over a series of days. So this is interesting, and perhaps this would be sort of a thing that I might consider changing if I were to run the game. This is pretty much, in my mind, a one-shot, or at least a very short adventure that would only take maximum 2 sessions, I'd say, really. So and that might not take place over 24 hours. They might steamroll through it. So making the Burning Plague perhaps more rapid could be an option, because then it becomes like a genuine threat that has to be dealt with in those 2 sessions, perhaps. Or does that make it too powerful? We've got to consider as well that we are dealing with low-level players here, and even a small amount of constitution damage could be entirely fatal, particularly to those in the 3rd edition that have basically no hit points, like a wizard or a bard. You know, they get mowed down easily, particularly with constitution damage. So I suppose you'd have to think about that as well. Maybe you could show physical, or rather aesthetic, signs of the Burning Plague taking hold. So you can say that they have like a high temperature and they're feeling uncomfortable and claustrophobic, and then only later then you can perhaps go into the point where you are beginning to show that the characters are actually having mechanical penalties put onto them because of the plague. That's maybe how I'd approach it. Anyway, perhaps I'm wrong in that. I would love to hear if anyone would deal with that differently. If you're watching live, please let me know in the chat. If you are watching on YouTube, put it in the comments below. Do you agree with me there? Or should I just keep the disease verbatim as it says in the book? Be keen to learn your thoughts. And then it gives you ideas of ways to get the play character started, which I absolutely love, because that can be a paralysing moment for a DM, is the very beginning. Like, well, how do I get them to do this? We all are on I imagine we'd be on the understanding and shared ground and the social contract that we're here to play a particular adventure, so please involve yourself. Don't be the edgy lone wolf that has to be like, have your arm twisted to go into this adventure. So with that said, a number of options are given regarding this, and it all comes from the rich writing that we've had at the beginning of the adventure. So one of those examples could be that the PCs are hired by a wealthy merchant of a nearby city to seek out his wayward son. So we mentioned before that there were sons and husbands missing at this point. The lad left for the mines of Duvix Pass with hopes of financing his own digging venture there, and has not been heard from in the past month. My goodness. Wow, that's pretty. That's not a bad one, is it? And because it's a wealthy merchant, there comes the promise of not only money, but of the goods that merchant can provide, perhaps a future discount as well. So that's a good one if you just want to encourage players monetarily. By the way, Camden Hell's Lager today, which is actually very enjoyable. I have another. The other example that's given is this. Excuse me one second. There you go. The other example is this. The adventurers encounter refugees from the mines on the road. They tell the tale of a cave filled with glittering riches and carrying a powerful curse, while they are mere peasants with no understanding of such things. Oh, I love that. I love the haughtiness. While they are mere peasants with no understanding of such things, the refugees are certain that the adventurers might be able to discover the source of the cave's evil and put an end to it. So again, I suppose that's another like quick in, isn't it? Listen, there's this cave filled with powerful evil, but there is also glittering riches inside. So weigh up the pros and cons. Do you want to give that a go? And that's quite nice as well, because that's a nice way of introducing the adventurers, that they're on the road, making their way to this place for refuge, and on the way they hear these rumours. So, in fact, that's probably the one that I would start with, I think. I've said in previous streams and other videos that I like to begin particularly long campaigns with characters arriving somewhere, because the players are arriving there and it gives them license to ask questions and explore, because they've not been there before. They're arriving here. Whereas if they knew this place, they wouldn't need to ask any questions, would they? So them arriving on the road, I think, is the one I would go for in this case. But then later, perhaps they could then meet this wealthy merchant who could give the secondary objective of please find my lad who went to the mines. So I'd go for both, actually. I think you got a little bit of nuance there. Lots of things happening in the mines of Duvix Pass. So then all that is set up. Everything that we've done there, I think, has put us in a healthy position to start an adventure. Obviously, we would spend less time explaining that because we're analysing this as DMs currently, whereas if we were running it, we would be well underway by now. But just me having a read of that text, I feel, has informed me how I would approach it. I'd be curious to hear if anyone else thinks of a different method from what we've gleaned from the text. Would be very interested to hear. So here we are, the mines of Duvix Pass. There we are. So the adventure opens with the player character standing outside the lone entrance to the cavernous mines. And you begin by reading aloud or paraphrasing the following for the players. I love the text boxes. I absolutely would paraphrase in this. I don't think I'd like dead read from the text, but the text is, generally speaking, quite well written from this era of the game, so I wouldn't be opposed to it either, I don't think. Also, you're never sure exactly if there's like a certain detail that definitely gets covered in the text that you know, if you say paraphrase this and then you accidentally forget to say that, picks and shovels produced from soft banks of snow, then that could be useful later on. So anyway, allow me to read the following extracts. A cool breeze drifts down from the towering peaks of the Serpent Coil Mountains. Cool name. As you behold the entrance to the caverns. The frost-rimmed ground is littered with tools, picks and shovels, some of which protrude from soft banks of snow. A single darkened shaft leads into the depths of the mine ahead. The dirt path beneath its wooden support structure is covered with stone debris, a few pieces of which occasionally glint with the slightest hint of ore. No light issues forth from the tunnel. Burnt-out torches are strewn across the floor, their brackets torn from the shaft walls. Behind you, the worn road leads back through the crags to the valley below. Aside from the quiet whistling of the wind, complete silence fills the small clearing within the mountains. So, we move to our map, and we will begin, I suppose. It depends how you do this. I mean, you would absolutely have to use the map for this. I don't know about, maybe, I guess you could do Theatre of the Mind, but for this particular edition, I think it's harder to do Theatre of the Mind for 3rd edition than 3.5. It's very much more tactically based, I would argue. So let's expand the map a little bit then. So they're up here in this tunnel at the top there. That's the entrance as far as I make out. It says 1. Maybe I don't know. Yeah, that is the entrance. So they have to go through this narrow path. But then it says that's narrow, but then the map says that that square is 10 feet wide, which I don't know about you, but if you're walking down I know the tunnel is 15 feet wide. No, it is entirely accurate. So it is 10 and a half. 1.5 squares. So 15. Yeah. Forgive me. It is accurate. I just imagined it being like this narrow pass, but I suppose you need it to be quite wide if it's a mine, don't you? To be able to hoist equipment through and to bring whatever you bring out of the mine to be quite wide. Anyway, all that to say, the tunnel is quite wide. And I love that it starts giving you details to ask the players already. I love asking players to make checks, because particularly new players as well, because if you've got a new player that is unsure about what to do in any scenario or really how to play the game, you can just say, make a spot check for me, and we already are learning how to do checks. So spot check DC 15 reveals that the wooden supports to the tunnel are chipped and torn, as if having been damaged in recent battle. Further examination with the light source reveals that there is also they are also stained with blood, and aside from the picks and shovels, there is nothing of value at this location. So this tunnel extends 120 feet, according to this description and to the map, which leads us to Area 2, which is called the Greeting Room, EL1. The tunnel opens into a small, roughly rectangular chamber. Scattered chunks of silver ore surround an overturned pair of wooden carts. The lower half of what appears to be a human body juts out from beneath one of the cart's edges. It shows no signs of movement. Dry blood is smeared across the northern wall in several places. Exits lead to the west and the east. It's a very simple, standard size room. 2 carts overturned and a human body trapped beneath one of them. And it is this is our first test, though the players unfortunately won't know that, or maybe they will. Let's find out. You learn about the fact that both ways out of this place just go off to the east and the west, and it's still dark. It also reminds you that if you want to be using rules as is, that players will need lanterns or sources of light if they don't have dark vision. Which then you immediately get in this element of feeling pretty great if you've decided that you are playing a dwarf that can see in the dark. You know, moments that like put emphasis on your character having a different ability. So in that regard, that is, if you're introducing this to new players, that is something fun. Guess what? You can see in the dark. You don't need a torch. And suddenly you think, oh, cool, I can see in the dark. It's a good feeling to learn for the first time that you can see in the dark. However, we as the DM know this. The body left beneath the minecart serves as a trap for any meddlesome adventurers who disturb it, or the cart that it lies beneath. The ore found around the body serves as treasure. So this glittering treasure can be found around it. The body has remained, choice of wording, but the body has remained unmolested in the area for over a week and is no longer contagious. So that is a fair point. They could come in and think, oh my goodness, there's a body there. They might have died of the plague. The corpse is the miner's chief engineer, Jason Tungsten. Party members who have reached the mines of Duvex Pass may recognize him. He is obviously the victim of foul play, having suffered several puncture wounds to the chest and neck area. A successful heal check, DC 15, reveals that Tungsten has symptoms resembling those of the plague, and that he has been dead for about 2 weeks. And the check also reveals that there are a number of crude, broken crossbow bolts within the puncture wounds that Jason has apparently died from. So they'll see that this person has been murdered, straight up murdered by crossbow bolts. I should point out, as you know, we were talking about this being my first adventure earlier. My first ever character, I just suddenly thought, because I mentioned a dwarf just then, my first character was a dwarf called Tyranno. I thought I was so clever because the word, or the name Tyranno, sounds a bit like terrain. Also, my mountain bike had Tyranno written on the side of it, so I was like, it sounds kind of like earthy and muddy. So Tyranno the dwarf was in this room at one point. Fun fact, Tyranno the dwarf is a dwarf in the setting that we run our current game in, Knights of the Apocalypse. Anyway, all that to say, that dwarf at one point was in this place and did not know that this was a trap. The cart the body is pinned beneath is rigged with a line attached to a thunderstone concealed in the ceiling above. Anyone disturbing the cart, either by turning it over or seeking to drag the body out from beneath it, will snap the line and send the thunderstone crashing to the ground. Anyone within 10 feet of the cart will be affected by the resulting blast. Characters deafened by the thunderstone will recover their hearing after an hour. So a brutal introduction to traps in dungeons. So for those of you that aren't aware, a thunderstone is effectively like a enchanted rock that deals sonic damage when thrown hard against a surface. It's effectively a flashbang of the D&D world. So the thunderstone trap: sonic attack deafens all within a 10-foot radius. Fortitude save DC 15. For all those that fail, are deafened for 1 hour. My goodness, 1 hour. Well, you definitely need to be able to hear when you're delving into this mine that is potentially filled with kobolds and undead servitors and a mad orc shaman. So the hearing is definitely gonna, that's gonna impede you significantly in this manner, or not, depending on other things. You can find this if you make a particularly good search check, a disabled device, because this is brutal. Not just anyone can undo traps in this system, it would seem, at least. Yeah, it's disabled device to actually undo this thing. You could spot it, but you wouldn't be able to disable it. My goodness. And then the treasure is chunks of silver ore that can be salvaged. So, and it's worth 200 gold pieces. So, is 200 gold pieces worth it? I think you are. That is a balm to the injury that you just earned 200 gold pieces. Admittedly, likely to be shared amongst all that join you on this adventure, but still. And this is the development, which I quite like, is if this trap is triggered, the Thunderstone alerts kobolds in areas 3 and 5 to the presence of the players. This is a trick that I love to use in lots of different things in D&D. I imagine this might have actually introduced me to the idea, but also things like in the Elder Scrolls series as well. Where there are noise traps. It's a common thing in when you're out in the wilderness hunting as well in certain areas of the world, like in real life, like to have noise traps to warn you if things are approaching your camp. Anyway, that's cool, because then suddenly the enemy that you're trying to catch off guard are aware that you're here. Interesting stuff. We have a first time chat here. It's the Mapronomicon. Hello, thank you ever so much for dropping by. Oh goody, caught alive. Toronto. Now you sound like a local in the Big Smoke. It's Toronto. It's how everybody be saying Toronto. Oh, I see. You're doing an accent. I do apologise for murdering the accent. Toronto, wait, when you live there. It's how everybody be saying Toronto. Is that right? I've just butchered that, haven't I? I do apologise. For those who live in Toronto, I have deeply offended you. I have definitely deeply defended you. I will defend you to the last because of the fact that I offended you. There we go. But lovely for you to drop by. Happy that you've caught me live. Really, really glad to see you in the chat. Yeah, you can tell me actually. Macronomicon is 200 gold pieces worth being hit with a thunderstone? You tell me. So anyway, once they explore past this point, they find the Area 3, which is the mess hall. Let's have a look at the map again. So the map here then, let's see. I'm going to expand it again. Oh, that was a close thing. Nearly grabbed the wrong thing on my system. Let's see. Number 3. Oh, there it is. It's very faint up in the top corner there with the number 3. So let's zoom in a little bit. So they go from the noise trap. They can go up there. So that's what we're looking at now. A larger room. Gotcha. And I'll read what we find there. So if you go into the 3rd room, let's see what we discover. Macronomicon says 200 sounds doable, especially if you're counting rounds disabled. Some bangers do D8 Sonic or D6, not sure which system. Yeah, I mean, I think for sure, yeah, you actually receive sonic damage as well as the effect. I think in a number of cases that's actually unmerciful. But then again, we're talking about level 1 characters. In the 3rd edition, a D8 of sonic damage could kill someone. Like, it genuinely could kill them, or at least knock them down at least. So yeah, pretty disastrous if that were to occur. Just realised my overlay's gone a bit funny. There we go. That's better. All right. So anyway, let's go back to what we were reading then about the mess hall, Area 3. So this was once a dining quarter of the mine. This area has now been made into a watch post of the Kobold Warband. Once the PCs open the door, it's not locked, and enter. You can read the following description aloud. This large square room houses 4 long wooden tables, each with a bench on either side. On top of the tables lies a number of wooden bowls and eating utensils. In the southeast corner of the room, a small stew pot steams over a fireplace carved into the floor. A pungent odour hangs in the air. So that's a really nice description, actually, because you're many people who give advice on D&D and DMing say that when you're trying to give descriptions, to try your best to appeal to as many senses as possible. Often you're explaining what the players can see in their environment and what they can hear, unless of course they've been deafened by a sonic attack. But what they can smell, what they can taste as well is also well, it involves you into the world, doesn't it? It's immersive. I like that very much. So inside the stew pot, if there's a look, there's a particularly foul concoction made of some rotting foodstuffs from the storeroom in Area 4. So Area 4 is a storeroom. Okay, so the storeroom is next to it, and inside, yeah, some pretty debatable things inside there, I imagine. Let's see. Yep, so it's got Area 4, it's got mixed bits of meat from the rats the kobolds have caught as well. Oh my goodness, that they're eating rats in their stew, my goodness. I have a vague memory of this actually happening in our game as well, because it says, what if one of the player characters decides to eat it? Because you know for a fact, dear viewers, that any of you who are DMs, I imagine a number of you watching this run games, you know for a fact, deep in your heart, that a player will try that stew. game, even though it is likely the worst idea imaginable. It's gonna happen, and I think you probably know which player in your gaming group would do that. I know which player in my gaming group would do that. I'm not going to say their name because they might watch, but I know. I bloody know. So let's have a look. Oh god, of course. So if you tried the stew, guess what? Also contagious. Also has elements of the burning plague within it. So if your funny friend decides that they're going to try the foul-tasting rat stew, guess what? Now you've got the burning plague. See, it's everywhere. I actually really love the idea that there's such an element of danger where, like, anything, you could potentially, like, catch it at any point. So there are only 2 exits from this room, with the door to the east landing to Area 2 and a passageway leading... Right, okay, so it's just describing what we can see in the map there, so we can see where the exit is and the like. If the PCs have not already warned them of their presence, either by setting off the trap in Area 2 or by being particularly noisy on their way to Area 3, coming down the corridor wearing full plate conversationally, conversing loudly, casting a spell outside the door, etc., they will encounter a large number of creatures here. Creatures. Oh my word. So we learn then... Really? That's interesting. That is definitely different to how I remember us playing it. Because it turns out they are here. The kobolds are here. My goodness. 9 kobolds have stationed themselves in this room. If the PCs were noisy in the passageway between areas 2 and 3, they can make a single lesson check, DC 11, for the kobolds to determine if they have been alerted. If successful, 5 of the kobolds will move silently, withdrawing to area 4 to prepare an ambush, so while the others stay behind to delay the progress of the adventurers. Interesting. Okay. Interesting indeed. Yeah, so that's another little trick that I like to, which I'm actually going to be making a video about at some point when I get around to it, which is the idea of reinforcements, the idea of having, of layering a battle. You will notice that when your players get really comfortable in their roles, particularly in combat and encounters, they will fall into a pattern where they will position themselves at a certain point in the battlefield. So if they're a spellcaster or ranged attacker or something, they'll position themselves at a certain point. The melee characters will go forward, they'll stay back, and so on. And you have sort of like the layout, the formation of the party in battle. So it is always a good thing to mix up combats by having new combatants arrive from different directions, because then you can't be comfortable. You can't just fall into the same tactics, because all of a sudden, oh no, look, someone's behind us now. We have to fight this battle on 2 fronts. And that's a really lovely idea of having them, if they hear the players coming, the kobolds get the chance to hide in the pantry in area 4 there, and then spring out once the battle has engaged. Mapronomicon says, I love this retrospective streaming segment. I must make myself horizontal and get to work. Very good. Yes, you get to work. Great day, friend. Cheers. Cheers to you, Mapronomicon. Thank you for dropping by, and thanks for saying hello. Much appreciated. So yeah, this battle, let's have a look at those kobolds then. So kobolds naturally statted in the monster manual, but they've rather kindly put their stats here. Small humanoid creatures. They're going to be attacking the enemies with half spears, which do 1d6 minus 2. I wonder if they have been cursed. Because they've been cursed, they are weaker than usual, perhaps. I know kobolds are weak at the best of times anyway, but yeah, wow. So if they hear them, they can actually overhear. They could actually overhear the kobolds. So then the players can be ready to when they go into this section. But battle will erupt, and the tactics suggested as if the kobolds hear the player characters in the tunnel, they will flip over the table farthest from the entryway and use it as a barricade, gaining 1/2 cover. Interesting, 1/2 cover provides a armor class bonus of +4 and a reflex save bonus of +2. So yesterday when we were playing our plagued stream of Knights of the Apocalypse, which you can catch on Performance Check on YouTube and Twitch Live every Monday, we said that half cover gave you +2, but it's actually +4. Very interesting. Unless they've changed that in 3rd edition to 3.5. Have to look at some point. So yeah, they've effectively like barricade them in, and I love that. They are sensible enemies that will do everything they can to try and win the fight, which I think is great. And also the players are at a huge disadvantage having to come from such a narrow corridor into their domain. They're already at a huge disadvantage, and they can't hear a thing. Which I love to say, if the players can hear the kobolds, well, most of them, after that save, probably won't at level 1. My goodness. Cheers, everyone, by the way. Thanks for joining this retrospective. I really appreciate you dropping by. Going to be looking at a few other modules at some point when I get time. The Red Hand of Doom, perhaps, is one that has been quoted as rather popular. Not one that I've actually played, though, so that would be one that I would actually be delving into for the first time. I'll try and find some of the others that I got to play as well back in the day and see how they hold up. So the battle erupts, and the gods willing, the players will survive, defeating the kobolds, and each kobold has 11 gold pieces on them. Each kobold, 11 gold pieces, my goodness me. And there's an amethyst, an oval-shaped amethyst on one of them, and a small iron key in his pouch as well. And the amethyst was a reward from the warband's leader to the head of this area's watch force for being particularly bloodthirsty in the slaughter of the miners. My goodness me. So even the little kobolds are having like a little bit of a dimension added to them. We know that the kobold here was particularly bloody in its attempt to destroy the militia that found themselves trapped here and killed. So this goes on to describe the larder that they would encounter here. Oh my goodness! And more creatures would await them in the larder as well. My goodness. So rats, a swarm of rats. Oh, but they wouldn't attack. It doesn't say that they're attacking or anything. Oh. Right, so if they're rifling through the food, they might disturb a rat in there that is carrying the burning plague. We have to remember that everything in this place is contaminated. My goodness. So yeah, they could get contaminated by the rats in the larder. And then, more immediately dangerous, is the dire weasel hiding in a pile of sacks in the southwestern corner of the room. My god, a dire weasel. So, fun fact, a dire weasel featured heavily in my last game that I ran, which was offline. And my goodness, when they attach the dire weasel, they grip on, and their main combat specialty is that they do this thing called blood drain, which is they just remain fixed on you, and you start losing blood, and then start losing your constitution. And slowly bleed out with a dire weasel attached to you. And yeah, the rats also attack you. My goodness. My goodness. So you get attacked by rats and a dire weasel just when you think you're out of the clear from the kobolds. You see what I mean? You are level 1 at this point. And you're having all of this thrown at you. Like, I love the brutality, to be honest with you. I really do. Very good. So then we move to Area 5, if you survive. Oh no, sorry, bear with me. There is a barrel that hides some treasure. So they go into things like there's wine that's been placed here. That's an extravagant gift from a merchant to the Miners Due X Pass. Hey, that wine could belong to the merchant that we met previously. And perhaps he would pay handsomely to have it returned. And it even says the cask will fetch 200 gold pieces if sold upon the quest completion. I love that. So you're just finding all these little rewards that are equipping your players to get better equipment for the next adventure. Love it. And that's basic stuff, but just having it formatted there for your use is really useful and handy. I really like that. A barrel filled with strips of contagious dried beef jerky. And I love it. It says, in brackets, and rats. So even more rats are in there, in that barrel. My God. There is also, it's actually funny because Matt Pronomicon mentioned Alchemist Fire. Oh, right. So this barrel stores the lamp oil formerly used in the mine's lanterns. It is, of course, highly flammable. If its contents are exposed to fire, the resulting explosion acts as alchemist fire. I do apologise. So the sole exemption of having, my goodness me. So use the rule of alchemist fire should the barrel of lamp oil go up. Which could easily happen in that combat with the kobolds. My goodness. In the fifth, I love that every barrel is counted for. Barrel 4, half consumed quantity of strong, and in brackets, and contagious ale. Like everything in here is contagious. Stop eating and drinking things. And then barrel 5 is filled with the remainders of a few contagious wheels of cheese, and the rats who have been busily consuming them. And a successful search check will reveal that this barrel is in fact false, concealing a hidden compartment. And within the compartment hides a small cloth bag containing a moonstone worth 50 gold pieces, a gold brooch with a jade inlay, 250 gold pieces, 3 pieces of moss agate, or agate, is that like an ingredient? I think it is. Additionally, the bag holds 24 gold pieces and a vial with a potion of invisibility. Now we're evening the odds. My goodness, a potion of invisibility. My goodness. The stash of one of the miners who enjoyed a secondary, less reputable occupation. This treasure has been left behind following his demise. So one of the miners in here was a thief and was stashing things in this barrel. Oh, I love it. See, there's all sorts of layers to this place. I love it. Vertical, Matt Bernonicon says. Yes, I did think it's like, I'm going to work in a horizontal fashion. I did wonder. Oh my goodness me. So what have we got in this next section here? So we move to Area 5, which is called Chutes and Ladders. When the party is 40 feet down... Oh, right, so they're down. So they head down this corridor here, if we're looking at the map. So they go down here. And what does it say? When the party is 40 feet down the slope, so I'm assuming it's a slope. I imagine it probably says that somewhere else, but again, paraphrasing and skim reading. When the party is 40 feet down the slope leading from Area 2, the incline suddenly becomes much steeper. A soft blue luminescence glows in the distance farther down the ramp, where 20 feet later the tunnel opens into a large cavern. Now this is the thing that I genuinely remember really quite well. This cavern here. The tunnel also narrows here to a width of 10 feet. Any dwarves within the party automatically receive a search check. So Toronto, bloody search check here. DC 20 though, for a level 1 character. Come on. DC 20 for a level 1. At the point where the tunnel's slant changes to determine where they notice a trap in the stonework 10 feet ahead. Once the party arrives in the cavern, read or paraphrase the following to the players. Again, I feel that that's really specific, so maybe I just read it straight from the book. Cheers once again. sure we're good on the stream. Oh, someone followed me. Thank you very much for whoever followed me today on the stream. Thank you ever so much. Okay. So, yeah, we're told to read this box. This enormous cavern extends upward for at least 100 feet, climbing high into the bowels of the mountain. Glowing blue-green lichens creep across the rough walls, and man-sized stalagmites protruding from the ground in this area, their faint light growing and then diminishing again every few seconds. The illumination occasionally highlights small flecks of silver, which glitter in the face of the great western wall of the cave. Several cables hang down from the edge of a wide hollow within that wall. The hollow penetrates deep into the west face of the cavern and begins about 20 feet above where you stand. The air here feels cool and damp. So I find that description a little bit confusing, personally. Unless it's just the way I read it. Obviously, reading aloud and on the spot, it is difficult sometimes. But this is effectively the central mining area for the workers. And the cables hanging from the ledge of the hollow were used to lift miners up to the richest deposits of silver. Okay, that makes sense. And they are tied to pitons, which are firmly dug into the ground of the cavern and are therefore secure, although the players will have no way to judge that without climbing up the hollow themselves. My goodness. So, I'll describe how I remember this, because how I remembered it is that you have this big tunnel, this big cavern, sorry. I'll just bring up the map so I can have a glance at it and put it so that that is like in full view. So if I grab the map, let's see. Yeah, so as I remember that there was a narrow walkway that led around the outskirts of the cavern. And the idea is that you had to balance to go around, because this was a big pit with the stalagmites. So we can see on the map there, the stalagmites have been drawn, these big spikes. And the idea was that you had to navigate these narrow walkways leading around the outsides of this cavern. And then, when you were doing that, then disaster would strike, because guess what? There are more kobolds in this place. As we learn, as we read further here. So first of all, there is a trap, a simple pit trap awaits the players who continue on recklessly after the entrance tunnel incline becomes drastically steeper. It is set exactly 10 feet away from the egress into the cavern that makes up Area 5. The pit is 10 feet by 10 feet in area, roughly 20 feet deep. Ah, okay. So there's a pit trap as well that you might fall into if you just wander in. And if you fall in, that's easily 2d6 points of damage. I remember a few of us falling in this. I remember even back in the day. I seem to recall a bunch of us falling through. And then we have Madoc, the Kobold Warband's leader, who was alluded to earlier, has instructed his men to set up camp on the ledge, waiting in the shadows of the hollow. They are prepared to attack anything that enters the grotto. The Thunderstone trap in Area 2 has been effective, or the pit trap in this area has been sprung. The kobolds are alert and hiding as the adventurers enter the cavern. Otherwise, the DM should use his or her best judgment as to whether the party has taken the necessary steps to avoid being heard, which we know that won't be the case. Oh my goodness, and this kobold's a sorcerer. Oh my word. My goodness me. At least I think male kobold saw too. Yeah, a sorcerer. My goodness. Yeah, so that's mad. So spells known. The warband leader Madoc the kobold knows the spell open and close, so handy for locked doors, ghost sound, dancing lights, daze, ray of frost, burning hands, and summon monster 1. My god. And their tactics are that the desperate Madoc orders his troops to launch volley after volley of crossbow bolts at the party. He also risks sending a kobold to the ledge's edge to cut the ropes leading down to the cavern floor if the party seems interested in climbing up to engage in melee. Yeah, see, this is what I remembered. I remember when we were playing, it felt very much like that bit where they reach the steps in the Mines of Moria, and suddenly they hear shoo, and like arrows are like flying at them before they do the staircase thing in the Fellowship of the Ring film. It felt like that. We were stuck on this ledge, and then suddenly all these kobolds were like launching crossbow bolts at us. But I guess as well that could also have been spells being hurled at us as well. My goodness. So these kobolds engage in range battle, and then the players have to either engage in range, which I love. That's like, this is already a different battle to the brawl that we had in the earlier room. This one means that you actually have to get to them again, and they are engaging with ranged missile fire. My goodness. And I love that once again, it gives you the tactics. It gives you the tactics. So Modoc orders his troops to launch volley after volley of crossbow bolts at the party. He also risks sending a kobold, blah, blah, blah. If the party seems overwhelmed by the kobold missile fire, point out that the man-sized stalagmites on the ground offer excellent up to total cover from the hail of crossbow bolts. It is recommended that the DM refer to the climb rules on page 64 of the player's handbook to gauge the difficulty levels of climbing the 20-foot ledge. So that's nice. Guys, you can hide behind the stalagmites on the floor. So that's really cool that there's a natural element of this cave is the very thing that's actually protecting them at this point. But that didn't. I don't remember that happening in our campaign. Admittedly, this was a very long time ago, so maybe I'm misremembering. But I remember us being all on that ledge whilst arrows were firing at us. Then again, as I mentioned, our science teacher who was running this was a particularly terrifying man. A few of us didn't make it. And again, we have a development. So after the encounter, I love that there is a paragraph that explains like what develops from this. So note that Madoc is open to negotiation, particularly if he feels his warband is seriously overmatched by the level 1 PCs. If the tide turns against the kobolds, or if the battle turns into a standoff with the PCs refusing to emerge from cover, perhaps Madoc attempts to parley with the adventurers, hoping to offer them the wealth of the demon, Jack, of course, farther down within the mountain in exchange for leaving the warband unmolested. Again with the unmolested. He denies that his band had anything to do with the deaths of the miners. A blatant lie, of course, but consents to leaving the mines if doing so will spare him and his followers. Madoc is very reluctant to fight to the death, especially given the presence of his young child in Area 5A. There's even more to this story. Madoc has a child. What? I don't remember this at all. Area 5A. Let's look at the map once again. So there on the map we have this small exit. So they're all positioned up here. And 5A, there is an encampment where Madoc's offspring is apparently hiding. This concealed alcove serves as the main encampment for the kobold warband, used primarily as storage area and sleeping quarters. This small cave houses the remnants of a cooking fire, a few scavenged blankets, several sacks full of treasure, and 2 young kobolds who accompanied the warband on their exploration mission as a rite of passage. So it's like a coming-of-age story happening in the middle of this kobold expedition into the cave filled with this deadly burning plague. My goodness, this is great! My goodness, there's so many layers here, like so many elements of this adventure, so many details that can be discovered that could just be missed if you didn't ask the right questions, or if you didn't. Yeah, and that could lead to. This could lead to further adventures down the line. What if you kill Madoc, but the son survives? that kobold is going to come looking for your adventuring party with an even bigger warband. The kobold will have their revenge. I love it. My goodness. It says that there are the only creatures here. So it says creatures once again in here. So creatures. If the characters somehow gain access to this room, they find 2 immature kobolds huddling fearfully beneath the cloak that they are using as a blanket. There are no stats provided for the 2 helpless kobolds, as they are effectively at the mercy of the heroes. It should be noted for those coming into contact with them that the children are contagious. Oh no! No! They're contagious as well! They have the burning plague! Treasure. The sacks are filled with several weeks' worth of mines harvested ore and can be sold for 500 gold pieces. In addition, the cloak that the children huddle under is in fact a +1 cloak of resistance. Love that. Again, good aligned PCs should think carefully about how they deal with the kobold children, even with the realization that they hold a treasure. Oh, so it's like kind of just like a little hint, like you should just think carefully about this, alright? It's not telling you what to do, but we all know that there are some players out there that would probably do unthinkable things in that situation. But there we are. That's the nature of the game. There are some people that play differently to others, and that's okay as long as you're not upsetting anyone. Don't upset anyone! Anyway, after this momentous revelation about the kobolds and the family lines, the line of the kobolds, that's what I'd call it, or the blood of the kobold. Yeah, blood of the kobold, I like that very much. Area 6, the charnel pit. That is a title. I love that very much, the charnel pit. So once again, we move away from Area 5 to Area 6 here, the charnel pit. So it is this little outcrop that appears in the middle of this corridor. My goodness. Okay, let's have a look. So the charnel pit, the tunnel from Area 5 winds down 70 feet down into the mountain before opening to Area 6. So there's another slope down. You're going deeper into the mountain. At this stage, if I'm running it, I'm definitely kind of building up the villain, the main villain at this point. Feeling like the deeper you delve into the darkness, it's almost like the further into the clutches of Jack you are going, perhaps. Really, really sort of like foreshadowing him at this point to make him terrifying. A diseased orc shaman with nothing to lose. So, although initially... Oh, okay. So, as they descend, as the PCs approach, they begin to feel an uncomfortable heat emanating from the room ahead. Although initially mild, when the party first begins feeling its effects, it reaches sweltering intensity by the time the characters reach the entryway of Area 6. When the heroes enter the room, read or paraphrase the following to them. Waves of heat wash through the cave, thickening the air and making breathing difficult. This small, bowl-shaped cavern's floor is littered with humanoid corpses. Rats skitter through the sea of bones within the sunken floor, pausing occasionally to nibble at a choice morsel. A host of their brethren lie nearby on their backs, some of them still twitching with a few remnants of life. A tunnel's opening is visible in the eastern wall of this chamber, and in the distance the sound of rushing water can be heard. This chamber, it seems, as we go back into the notes, serves as the breeding pit for the burning plague. So this is the incubation pit. This is what Jack has been using to keep the plague going. Jack has stored the bodies of the kobolds and miners who have died within these caves in this room. I do remember this now. Oh my god. It's all coming back. So you come into this cave and all these diseased bodies are just lying there. My god, this is intense. So all those who've died within these caves in this room with the intent of using them as incubators for the disease. The rats that feast on these bodies continue the spread of the plague throughout the mines. So see, the rats were important. Obviously, rats being a big carrier of things in real life too, sadly. Although it is not initially apparent to the PCs, Jack has also left a few creatures among the corpses to deal with any adventurers who might explore the area. Beyond that threat, the cave itself serves as a trap for those foolish enough to cross it. So yeah, another chance for you to contract the burning plague, and also, guess what? There are things in here waiting for you. My word, the presence of the plague here is so strong that merely remaining within the confines of this chamber provides the adventurers with the threat of contracting it. Every 3 rounds that a character remains within this area, he or she must succeed in a fortitude save DC 13 or become infected with the burning plague. If a character remaining for 3 rounds within the area is already in the incubation period of the plague, he or she must succeed in a fortitude save. So they already have it, they have to make a save immediately and begin suffering the ability loss effects of the plague. So you're right at the point where you're about to face the main villain of this game, and then you are just struck down with further ability damage, further constitution damage, which renders you weakened in the face of this powerful orc shaman. Wow. Brutal. That is brutal. My word. I think in that I would maybe second guess that at that point. You're so close to getting to the main villain. Is that too much? Is that too harsh? No, I've changed my mind. I actually really like it. It's really devious. The whole game is called the Burning Plague. It should always be an ever-present threat. I've changed my mind. Of course I would subject them to that. That is mean as well, if you're already incubating the disease. And that actually answers our question from earlier. Do you remember when I was saying, oh, I would have the plague show up sooner so you can see the effects of the plague in action? Well, actually, maybe it's better you don't, because then you have this dramatic reveal that actually, by moving through the charnel pit, that effect is immediately fast-forwarded to now. And you have this moment right before your darkest hour where you face the villain that you realise that a number of your party members are beginning to succumb to the disease that you are here to prevent, here to stop. Great stuff. My goodness. So, here we are. We're in the charnel pit, and to make matters worse, you, adventurers, are not alone as the PCs cross the length of the room. Zombie guardians Jack had left behind to intercept the would-be heroes lift themselves from their places among the corpses and attack. So some of those bodies that we're using to incubate the disease are zombie miners. Oh my goodness me. Oh my goodness. So undead just rush at you. So whilst you're in this room, every 3 rounds you have to worry about contracting the disease or having the disease wreck your constitution. And you're being kept in this room by a zombie encounter, which traditionally aren't very easy to kill. Particularly by level 1 players. My word. Listen, hopefully they get the jump on them, because the thing about zombies is that, yeah, they are... I mean, they're slow off the mark. They don't have very good initiative, so hopefully you go first, and hopefully you can overpower them quickly before terrible things happen. And of course, the 3.5 3rd edition special qualities of the undead come into play here, which you are reminded of in this in this module. It says special qualities: undead immunities, immune to mind influencing effects, poison, sleep, paralyzation, stunning disease, and necromantic effects. Not subject to critical hits, sneak attacks, ability damage, ability drain, or energy drain. Immune to anything requiring a fortitude saving throw. My goodness me. So the zombies will provide a terrible threat. And then to make matters worse, my god, I've just turned the page and read that there are also zombie kobolds within there as well. So zombified version of the kobolds that they've been fighting as well rise up, adding further stakes to this terrible conflict. My word. Speechless. Absolutely speechless. That is pretty severe. Right at the last minute. Hopefully they've done well against the kobolds at this point, is all I'm saying, because if they got wiped out early, this is just going to finish them totally. But you know what? That to me is the beauty of, at least I think there was the emphasis of that back in the day with older editions of D&D. The idea was that you were being challenged to see if your characters could make it through one of these, and then if they did, oh amazing, they're on to the next adventure, and if not, wow, damn, well maybe I'll try a different character. That is a good deal of the fun involved here. So yeah, I like that very much. So if they somehow manage to defeat the zombies, we are on to the final area of this this dungeon, this mine. Area 7, the Wellspring. A single jagged pillar of rock lined with glowing blue-green moss emerges from the depths of a pool within the centre of this cavern. Water courses down its side from a font near its tip, cascading into the pool below. The pool feeds a wide stream that flows rapidly along the length of the room, and then under the rock wall at the southern end of the cave. Several glyphs are carved deep into the stone face of the pillar. Their outlines are just visible beneath the light of the moss. An eerie sense of discomfort pervades this place. This is where I had my first boss battle ever. Tirana the Dwarf, accompanied by those that survived the previous encounters. A fighter, I should say. I think he was a dwarf fighter, and he, for some reason, I gave him a sword. I was like, they were like, don't orcs use axes? That was our primitive thinking. I was like, no, my dwarf will have a sword because I like swords. For all that good it did me. The cavern is about 70 feet wide by 120 foot long. So looking at the map, moving the burning plain back up a little bit. There we go. We've got the majesty of this arena here. And yeah, as I mentioned before, the format of this dungeon is something that I've used previously. I'll move my camera over there, so then I can put that behind this. There we go. So I'll put the map behind here. There we go. Yeah, so you have this this final chamber here, there, and the description is really epic. But what of our main antagonist? What about the figure that we have come here to deal with, the figure that has caused this terrible plague to happen in the first place? The glyphs carved here are written in orc script and serve as an entreaty to Grumsh to smite down Jack's enemies with a terrible pestilence. It also retells the history of the mines and the fate of the Tornclaw clan. So anyone who makes a successful knowledge religion DC 15 check, will recognise the symbols that make this place a place of worship for Grumsh. And the water of the pool and the streaming from the pillar, when examined, will appear to be particularly murky and foul. And a detect magic spell will reveal that indeed traces of some faint magic effect is in the water. So the prayers to Grumpshink involving these glyphs and this incantation and this vile curse is the source, and they need to break the circuit. And the only way to do that is to defeat Jacques. But where is he? Here we are. So it explains that Jacques has made his encampment near the pillar's top and hides on the opposite face of the pillar when the PCs enter the chamber. However, it then says, although Jacques appears frustrated, so eventually he'll reveal himself, I imagine. It doesn't say that, but I imagine he would reveal himself. Although Jacques appears frustrated that the adventurers have found his lair, he views their arrival as a challenge set for him by Grumsh. Grumsh demands a display of strength. So a display of strength he shall witness. Oh, I love it. This is great. And he views their arrival as a challenge set for him by Grumsh and methodically proceeds to do his best to eliminate them. He quaffs his potion of Bane shortly before they arrive in the cavern. Oh my word. And if he hears the party skirmish with the undead in Area 6, which, to be honest, how would you not? He'd be ready. There's no way they're taking out zombies silently. No way. When prepared for combat, Jacques shouts a curse of hatred at the adventurers and begins casting his ranged spells from the cover of the pillar. So you imagine these level 1 adventurers now rushing into this open terrain where they have to reach a pillar that is surrounded by water to reach this mad orc shaman that is firing down spells at you, okay? And you've got to get to him somehow. And I remember Tirana the dwarf, my guy was on it like Sonic. He was on it like a car bonnet. He rushed the pillar in this regard first of all to get into cover from the downpouring of magical power that exuded from this disciple of Grumsh. Let's read on. He begins casting his ranged spells from the cover of the pillar. He then uses darkness spell to obscure the battlefield and close for melee, letting his blind fight feat guide him in combat. Yes, he was up the top there. So as soon as we all got to the top of the pillar, I remember that the darkness fell. So he's then just in the darkness, beating the crap out of everyone, whilst these, I'll state it again, level 1 adventurers do their best to hold him off. And of course, it also says he also uses his contagion spells liberally, hoping to slay any adventurers already weakened by the plague. So again, he's got a contagion spell? Wow. So yeah, if they come into contact with the spell, fortitude save, or become infected with the burning plague. So yeah, he's got a special spell that basically allows him to liberally dose people with the burning plague. My goodness me. Now, the special qualities of the orc, he's got light sensitivity, so he will suffer -1 to penalties to attack rolls if it's bright in here or anything. And of course, he is also contagious and also succumbing to the disease himself. So if he comes into the contact of a contagious object, I guess, yeah. I mean, he's throwing these spells out, but there's nothing to stop him from getting further infected as well. So one rule for the players would be the same rule for Jacques Tornclaw. My goodness, a level 5 cleric. And not only that, but he's armed with like a +1 heavy mace, which Tirana helped himself to. I will say it was my proudest possession, because remember I said I had that sword with Tirana. that immediately went away. I was like, oh my god, I've got a magic mace. It's a +1 mace. Well, a master with a mace, but whatever. I pretended it was magical. He's got this stone holy symbol of Grumsh. He's got potion of cure light wounds, potion of visibility, potion of bane, as we mentioned. Scroll of summon monster 2. Lesser restoration, dispel magic. My word. Re-magic, resistance, core sphere, doom, protection from good, darkness, whole person. The in my opinion, one of the strongest combinations is a cleric who has the hold person spell and a mace in their hand, because you just hold them, and whilst they are considered helpless by being paralyzed, you then auto crit them with a mace to the face. That is not how Jack fought, though, as I recall, in our battle against Jack Tawnclaw. And I'm not saying this just to big myself up. I perhaps attribute this one moment as it might have been the moment that made me want to play D&D forever, which was that Tirano the dwarf, having spent half the battle climbing the pillar to reach the beast, rushed him through the darkness spell and somehow connected and bull rushed Jack Tawnclaw off the edge, and both of them went plummeting down onto the ground or into the water, and that knocked my guy out. And then one of the others went to finish Jack off in the next attack. And that was the end of Jack Tawnclaw. And then with the defeat of Jack Tawnclaw, we read in conclusion: defeating Jack has an almost immediate visible effect upon the waters of the wellspring, which begin to clear themselves of the muck of the plague. Shortly after his death, the mine itself remains in need of purification, and most of the contagious elements therein will have to be burned before it is safe to wander through the mountain's interior once more. The plague symptoms affecting the town of Duvix Pass will begin to subside with the cleansing of its water supply. Its grateful citizenry will offer a reward of 100 gold pieces taken from the mine's anticipated profits to each adventurer who helped reclaim the area. Also, each adventurer that survived, I will point out. The PCs also will find themselves welcomed as heroes in Duvix Pass for the rest of their lives, and will never need to pay for lodging or any supplies within reason during their return to that place. As for further adventures, word spreads among the Orc clans that the PCs slew the last son of the Tawnclaw clan. Grumsh One Eye, not pleased by the interference, sends word to his followers that warriors who bring him the heads of those meddlers who thwarted his burning plague will gain his favour. If Madoc remains alive at the adventure's end, he may return in the future as well, leading another war band to reclaim the mine he considers his. For now, however, the day has been won, and the dangers of the plague averted. The PCs and their players should take some time to enjoy the satisfaction of a quest completed. And that is our retrospective of the Burning Plague, also completed. I really enjoyed reading through that. It definitely gave me a pure shot of nostalgia to the heart, and I very much enjoyed exploring that, and also exploring how I would consider running it as well. In conclusion, I would pretty much run it straight as is. I don't think I would deviate at all that much. Like I said, I would probably play into the fact that Madoc's offspring is there, so that could be a further adventure. I love the involvement of Grumsh, and that is like foreshadowing the fact that this is going to lead on to other adventurers, and the adventurers are now known for destroying the last son of the Tawnclaw clan. That's cool, and that paints a target on their back as well, which will lead into further adventures. So, that, I think, will be it for the time being. But I would like to thank each and every one of you who has joined me in the stream. I do really, really appreciate those who are watching live. And I do really appreciate those who watch after the fact as well on YouTube. So if you want to catch more of these live, please jump on with me and give me your immediate thoughts on if you were playing this adventure. I will do more of them, and I think it'll be really fun to have people in the chat to respond to that, like, can make decisions about what they would do as players. Perhaps that could be something we could do. And for those of you watching after the fact on YouTube, as ever, if you like this video, give it a like. If we would like to see more like it, then give me a subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I hope that all of your performances are up to standard. Take it easy.